You know, I always thought the worst moment in my life would be the day I lost my father. Turns out I was wrong. That moment came just 3 days later, sitting alone at my desk, coffee still warm, inbox freshly opened, and heart still aching from the funeral. Came in the form of a cold, 6-line email. Clear your desk by the end of the day, Holly. Human resources will handle the paperwork. No explanation, no phone call, just a dismissal, like I was some temporary intern who'd forgotten to clock out. I read the words twice, then a third time. My heart didn't race. It sank. Because just a week earlier, that same man, my supervisor, had looked me in the eyes, patted my shoulder, and said, "Of course, take the time you need. Family comes first." And I believed him. That's what hurts the most. I wasn't fired for poor performance. I wasn't fired for some scandal or failure. I was fired for grieving my father, for taking 3 approved days to mourn the man who raised me. After 5 years of loyalty, late nights, missed holidays, mentoring younger staff, and helping the company break profit records, this was their answer. A dismissal. No thanks. No goodbye. No dignity. Just an email. That morning, I packed up my things in silence. One photo, a tiny desk plant, and 1,000 unspoken moments. People stopped and stared. One whispered, "What happened?" And I just smiled and said, "Apparently, love for family is a liability now. But let me tell you something. That day, something inside me shifted, not into bitterness, not into rage, but into resolve. Because when a river turns against you, sometimes the answer isn't to fight the current. Sometimes it's to stand steady like the rocks and let the current come to you." What happened next? Well, let's just say they never saw it coming. Before all of this, my life was full, not perfect, not flashy, but full of purpose. I was 34, living in Boise, Idaho, and proud to say I'd built something steady at Summit Edge Logistics. Not just a career, a team, a real one, the kind where people actually look out for each other. We celebrated birthdays with store-bought cake and off-key singing in the break room. We left post-it notes of encouragement on each other's desks. We pulled all-nighters together when deadlines loomed. And we high-fived like kids when the numbers came in strong. I wasn't just their team lead. I was their coach, their sounding board, their safety net. And in turn, they were mine. I'd worked my way up from the ground floor. 5 years of dedication. I gave it everything, stayed late, came in early, volunteered for the tough accounts. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I cared. I believed in Summit Edge, and maybe that sounds naive now, but back then, it felt like home. Dan, my direct supervisor, seemed decent enough. Stiff, but polite. The kind of manager who wouldn't crack a joke, but would shake your hand firmly and say, "Good job." He'd approved my leave personally when I told him my father had passed. He even muttered, "Take all the time you need, Holly. We'll manage." I believed that too. My dad, he was my rock. A quiet man who taught me to fish, to listen more than I spoke, and to always keep my word. He didn't say much, but when he did, it mattered. Losing him felt like the ground had shifted under me. So for those 3 days, I stepped away. not from responsibility, but to honor the man who had shaped every value I brought into that office. I didn't expect parades when I came back, but I didn't expect punishment either. And yet, when I walked into the office that morning, thinking I was returning to my work family, what I got instead was a digital pink slip. You know, people talk about how the world's changed, that loyalty means nothing anymore, that work is just numbers and bottom lines. But I still believed that people mattered, that how you lead a team, how you treat your people in their hardest moments, that was the true test of leadership. I thought some at Edge believed that too. I was wrong. But you know what? Sometimes it takes losing the wrong thing to make space for the right thing to find you. I still remember the way the air felt that morning. Crisp, quiet, the kind of morning where you feel the world slowly waking up around you. I had come into the office early, before sunrise, not because I had to, but because I wanted to ease back in, catch up quietly, and give myself a little time before the noise of the day rolled in. 3 days. That's all I had taken. 3 days to bury the man who gave me everything. The funeral had been small, just family and a few old friends from his fishing club. He would have liked that. Simple, no fuss. He never was one for big displays. Just a worn flannel shirt, a river, and a good cast. I came back still grieving, but ready to work, ready to move forward in his honor. And then I saw the email. Subject line: immediate termination, HR notification. 6 cold lines. Clear your desk by the end of the day, Holly. HR will handle the exit paperwork. We need employees who prioritize business continuity. Your absence during a critical operations window is a breach of expectation. I read it once, then again, and again. Dan Weaver's name sat at the bottom, the same man who had approved my leave just a week before. There was no meeting, no phone call, no conversation, just a decision, already made. For a long moment, I just sat there. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights and the ticking of the office wall clock. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. Instead, I reached for my phone, took a photo of the email, and forwarded it to my personal account. I'd seen enough in my years to know when something didn't smell right. Then I shut down my computer, pulled out the small box I kept for organizing files, and began to pack up my desk. Piece by piece, the life I had built in that office came down. The cactus my team gave me last Christmas, wrapped gently in newspaper. The photo from our team retreat, us laughing in goofy hats, soaked from whitewater rafting. The handwritten thank you cards I kept taped to my wall, each one a reminder of the people I'd helped grow. By the time Tanya from accounting walked in and saw me halfway through packing, the sun was just starting to rise. "Holly, what's going on?" she asked, her voice soft, almost cautious. I looked up, smiled politely, and said, "Apparently, I was supposed to choose spreadsheets over saying goodbye to my father." Her face changed instantly. Confusion turned to anger, then disbelief. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "You had leave. Dan approved it. Doesn't seem to matter now." She stood there, frozen. "Have you talked to Paula, the regional manager?" "No, I'm not going to fight it," I said, taping the lid shut on my box. But I won't forget it either, because some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. That email didn't just fire me, it erased 5 years of commitment with a click. And that's when I knew something was broken, not in me, but in them. You learn a lot about people when things fall apart. By 8:30 that morning, the office had started to fill, the usual hum of keyboards and coffee machines. But my corner was different. Jason was the first from my team to notice. His cheerful grin faded the second he saw the box. "What happened?" he asked, voice low. "I was let go," I said simply, "for taking bereavement leave." He stared at me, eyes wide. "That's insane." I gave a soft shrug. "Apparently, I didn't prioritize the company during critical operations." "But we just wrapped up the Newbrook merger. That project made them millions." Still wasn't enough. The words hung there between us. By 9 a.m., all 7 of my core team members had gathered. Quiet, stunned, angry. Ethan looked ready to punch a wall. Veronica had tears in her eyes. Louise kept shaking her head like she couldn't quite believe it. "Dan's going to regret this," Diane muttered. "Don't," I said gently, holding up a hand. "Don't waste energy on him. It's done." I wasn't going to fight for a place that saw my grief as weakness. I stood tall, taped up the last box, and looked around one final time. Not at the company, but at the people. My team. My second family. "I'm proud of everything we built," I told them. "Don't let this take that away." And then, as if fate wanted one final sting, Dan appeared. Arms crossed, face stiff. "I need everyone back at their desks," he said, louder than necessary. Nobody moved. He added, more sharply, "Now." One by one they returned to their seats, but not before giving me looks I'll never forget. Looks that said, "This isn't over." Dan approached. "You should have waited until the end of the day to pack up. This could have been handled with more discretion." I met his eyes, calm and steady. "Like the discretion you showed firing me by email?" His jaw clenched. "Business needs change rapidly," he said. "Your father's passing was unfortunate, but—" "Don't finish that sentence," I said, quietly but firmly. "Don't disrespect him further." For the first time, I saw something flicker across his face. Doubt, maybe even fear. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. Instead, I carried my box down the hall to HR. Every step measured, every breath calm. Barbara Kent, the new HR officer, looked up with a practiced smile that quickly faded when she realized why I was there. "I'm sorry about your father," she said softly. "Thank you," I replied, handing over my badge. As she slid the termination papers across the desk, I saw it. The non-disparagement clause, the non-compete, the 2-week severance, all cold, all clean. "This is unexpected," Barbara murmured. "I'd say cruel," I corrected gently. She hesitated. "Do you mind telling me what really happened?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the email. Her eyes widened. "Dan approved this leave himself?" I nodded. She scribbled something quickly on her legal pad. "I need to verify this. Would you mind waiting a moment?" As she stepped out, I looked out the window, down at the Boise River. The same river where my father taught me how to fish, where he taught me patience, where he told me, "The river moves, Holly girl." But the rocks stay steady. Be like the rocks. In that moment, I didn't feel broken. I felt steady. No, I wasn't going to beg to come back. I had something else in mind, a different kind of response, one that wouldn't come today or tomorrow, but it was coming, because the strongest revenge isn't loud. It's measured, quiet, and built to last. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I rested. Not the kind of rest where you still check your phone every few minutes. No, I mean real rest. The kind where your soul exhales. I went for a walk along the Boise River, stood at the spot where Dad used to teach me how to cast. I let the water speak, let the wind settle my thoughts, and I asked myself the question every person faces after a betrayal. What now? By Sunday evening, the answer arrived in the most unexpected way. My phone rang. Hank Fleming, the CEO of Vertex Transport Systems, Summit Edge's largest competitor. We'd met at an industry event the year before. He'd been casually trying to recruit me ever since. "Holly," he said, his voice warm. "I heard what happened. I don't know the details, but I do know this. They lost someone invaluable. I want to talk." The next morning, I walked into Vertex's downtown office. Glass walls, natural light. The air felt different there, collaborative, open. Hank welcomed me with a strong handshake and no small amount of respect. "I'm not going to sugarcoat it," he said. "We're expanding our Pacific Northwest division. We need leadership. Someone with vision. You're at the top of our list." I hesitated. "There's a non-compete." He smiled. "Our legal team reviewed it. It's overly broad and probably unenforceable. And if they try to push it, we'll cover your legal fees." For the first time in days, I felt something stir in me again. Hope. "Take the weekend to think about it," he added. "We can talk specifics Monday." That night, I met Veronica and Jason at a quiet pub outside of town. They looked concerned at first, but when I told them about the Vertex offer, their faces lit up. "Holly," Veronica said, "if you go, would they be hiring?" I blinked. "You're thinking of leaving Summit Edge?" Jason laughed bitterly. "Dan's already falling apart. He's scrambling, clients are panicking, and nobody knows where anything is. You were the backbone." I smiled softly, but stayed cautious. "If you're serious, I'll refer you, but you'll have to apply formally." Veronica reached into her purse and pulled out a printed confirmation email. "Already did. All of us did." "All of us?" She nodded, and that's when I realized they hadn't just lost me. They were about to lose the heart of the entire division. On Saturday, I met with an employment lawyer, Vincent Torres, calm, sharp, and honest. I showed him the termination email, the non-compete, everything. He frowned as he flipped through the papers. "This is textbook bad faith." "Do I have a case?" "Yes, but that's your call. I don't sense you're the kind to seek revenge through the courts." "You're right," I said, "but I don't want them blocking my future either." He nodded. "Given how you were terminated, that clause is likely unenforceable, especially in Idaho." By Sunday, my decision was made. Monday morning, I called Hank. "I accept," I told him, "but I have one condition." "Name it." "If any of my former teammates apply, I want them to get a fair look. Done, he said. If they're anything like you, we'd be lucky to have them. That afternoon, I signed the contract. Division Director, Pacific Northwest. 40% salary increase. Full benefits. A team to build from scratch. I walked out of that office feeling lighter. Then my phone buzzed. It was Paula, Summit Edge's regional manager. "Holly," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk. I just received 7 resignation letters, all from your team, all effective immediately." I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. Instead, I let her talk. She told me how Dan had acted alone, how she hadn't even been consulted, how she'd reviewed everything and would have never allowed the firing. "We'd like to offer you your position back, with a 10% raise and a formal apology." I paused. "Paula," I said quietly, "what I needed wasn't a raise. It was human decency when my father died." Silence. "We'll match the Vertex offer," she pushed. "Plus 15%. It's not about the money. Then what would it take?" I smiled. "Time travel." She fell quiet again. "I start my new job today," I said. "Good luck, Paula." By Wednesday, Vertex began interviewing my former team, all 7 of them. And by Friday, every single one got an offer. We met for dinner that night, laughed, hugged, toasted to second chances. Veronica raised her glass. To Holly, who didn't just lead us, she showed us we deserved better. Jason chimed in. "You didn't burn the old bridge, Holly. You built a better one." I looked around the table, at these people who had stood by me when it counted, and I thought to myself, this is what leadership is. Not titles, not paychecks, but the kind of loyalty that follows you, not out of fear, but out of trust. The first Monday I walked into Vertex as division director, I was 20 minutes early. Old habits. Hank greeted me in the lobby with a cup of coffee and a warm smile. "We're considering all 7 of your former team members," he said. "Their resumes are impressive. Interviews start Wednesday." I thanked him quietly, but inside, I was already imagining our new future. A week later, every single one of them had joined me. Jason, Veronica, Diane, Louise, Ethan, Gabriella, Kayla. One by one, they came through those doors, no longer scattered survivors of a broken team, but co-builders of something better. And oh, how they shined. Jason took charge of streamlining warehouse operations and shaved 15% off delivery times within 2 months. Veronica restructured client relations. She didn't just keep our contracts, she expanded them. Gabriella and Louise redesigned onboarding and workflow for our junior staff, building a culture of support Summit Edge never even dreamed of. The numbers spoke for themselves. By the end of our first quarter, our division had posted 30% growth, 3 major client acquisitions, 2 operational efficiency awards, employee satisfaction at an all-time high. And behind every number was a face I trusted. There were no late-night emails that began with threats, no passive-aggressive remarks about putting the company first, no walking on eggshells, just mutual respect. Then one morning, as we gathered for our weekly huddle, I felt something shift. Not around me, within me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was building. I was sitting in my office later that day, reviewing client proposals, when my phone buzzed with a news alert. Summit Edge Logistics announces restructuring amid client exodus. I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't gloating. It wasn't revenge. It was simply justice. I later learned that the Wilson account, one of Summit Edge's biggest clients, had left them and signed with us. The same account Dan had once said I didn't prioritize. Then came the Hernandez shipping group and the Brookline chain. Clients weren't just leaving Summit Edge. They were following people they trusted, people like us. A few days later, I received a quiet message from Barbara Kent, the HR officer who had seen me off the day I was fired. Dan Weaver has been placed on administrative leave. Paula initiated a full investigation into bereavement policy violations. The board is involved. I read it twice, and I felt nothing but calm, because I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't waged war. I had simply stood still, like the rocks. Paula reached out to meet me for lunch not long after that. She had left Summit Edge herself and was now consulting on workplace culture. When we met at a quiet restaurant by the river, she looked tired, but lighter. "I came to apologize properly," she said. "I didn't stop what happened to you. I let Dan act alone, and I regret it." I nodded, listening. "The board's review was brutal," she admitted. "They lost the company's soul the day they lost your team, and the numbers reflected it." "Sometimes," I said, "numbers catch up to values." She smiled, though her eyes were damp. "You didn't scream, Holly. You didn't threaten lawsuits or slam doors. And yet, you won." "How?" I took a deep breath, because I didn't want to destroy them. I just wanted to prove that people deserve better, and I built it. She looked away for a moment, then whispered, "That's leadership, the kind we all talk about, but rarely see." That evening, our team gathered at the new office's rooftop patio for a small celebration. Someone had brought cake. Jason had balloons. Veronica had made a playlist of cheesy songs from our early days. And me? I just stood there watching them laugh, watching them thrive. We raised our glasses. "To Holly," Jason said. And to the moment Dan sent that email, he thought he ended something, but he started something instead. I laughed, not a bitter laugh, a full, open one. Because in the end, they hadn't fired me. They had freed me to become something more, freed my team to find a place where they mattered, freed us all from a culture that forgot how to care. And isn't that something? Sometimes the worst moment in your life turns out to be the doorway to everything better. It was early spring in Boise. The snow had melted from the hills, and the river had begun to rise again, slowly, steadily. I was standing in front of a conference room full of executives at Vertex, presenting our year-end results. Our division, once just a proposal in a notebook, was now the company's fastest-growing region. 30% growth, 4 major client acquisitions, the highest employee retention and satisfaction scores in the entire company. When I finished, Hank stood and said, "You've not only exceeded expectations, you've redefined them." Later that afternoon, he handed me a letter. I had been promoted to Executive Vice President of Operations for the entire Northwest region. I smiled, not for the title, but for what it meant. That kindness and competence could coexist. That leadership didn't have to shout to be strong. That grief didn't make you weak. It made you more human. Each member of my original team had grown in their own way. Jason now led his own division. Veronica had earned national recognition for her client programs. And the others, Kayla, Ethan, Louise, Diane, Gabriella, they were all thriving, confident, respected. That same week, a small package arrived at my office. Inside was a cactus plant, slightly bigger now, still healthy, and a handwritten note from Barbara Kent. Rescued this from your old desk. Thought you might want it back. Summit Edge closes next week. I placed the cactus on the windowsill, where it could soak up sunlight. It had survived, just like I had. That evening, I drove out to the Boise River. Same spot where Dad used to bring me. Same rocks, same current. I stood there for a long time, listening. The water was faster now, pushing past the stones with that soft, insistent roar. I thought about everything that had happened since that cold email, and I whispered, "You were right, Dad. The river moves, but the rocks stay steady." Because here's the thing about life, especially when you've lived long enough to see both storms and seasons. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It isn't about destroying the thing that broke you. It's about building something so strong, so full of purpose, that the old world no longer matters. I didn't destroy Summit Edge. I didn't need to. They collapsed under the weight of their own choices. But what I did do was build. I built a space where people mattered, where grief wasn't punished, where loyalty was earned, not demanded. And I watched as others came to believe in it too. Clients followed us. Talented people applied. And the culture we built grew beyond the 8 of us. We had become something more than a team. We had become a movement. Quiet, strong, steady, like the rocks. So if you've ever been mistreated, overlooked, discarded, if you've ever stood in a room where you gave your all and still felt invisible, let me tell you this. You don't need to fight the current. You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to stand your ground. Stay true to what matters, because eventually, the river always reveals the rocks. The greatest revenge isn't in tearing down what hurt you. It's in creating something better, something so beautiful, the past becomes irrelevant.